Thank you for making time for me.
Oh, good. Thanks for having me.
Of course, it's my pleasure. I want to show you something.
Uh, that's great.
That is you. You taught
That's
me
great.
how to breathe.
Amazing. Amazing. I
Listen,
love it.
I'm I feel very privileged, had the luxury of being able to study at Neighborhood Playhouse with you and taking voice classes and movement with you. And ever since I'm applying those instructions and those techniques that you taught. And as a matter of fact,
That's funny. I've got mine here. I've got mine right here too.
look at this.
Uh,
Hold on.
yes, we've got more.
And this
I've got the
one,
little ones.
you
We
have
got
the
the
little
blue
one
ones.
too. Oh my God,
Yeah,
look at this
we got
one.
the blue ones. Oh, the ring. Amazing. That's great.
This was like, I've never thought that there is something for your to massage your knuckles and fingers. Who knew?
Yeah,
If it
I
wasn't
know.
for you.
Did you use these? How about these? The blue spiky
Oh,
balls? I don't think we have them.
I don't remember, no.
I don't think we did because they were back ordered. When I
Oh, that's
started
how it
teaching
was.
there, yeah, they were back ordered, so the fall got them, but not the summer session. Yeah.
Well, anyways, these are amazing tools. I already have like a bunch of rituals that I do, but I introduce them to my preparation.
In your practice, yeah.
And even not just for actors, I mean, these are fabulous for every single human being. As long as you
Oh yeah.
have,
That's
you
right.
can use your body
If
members.
you
You
have,
can use, right?
that's right. That's right. Well, that's why I don't only work with actors. I mean, I work with all kinds of people and give them all the same things. There's nothing different I do with them than I do with everyone, all the actors I work with. Yeah.
That's what I wanted to actually bring up because you have such rich career as an actor. You
Mhm.
studied at Neighborhood Playhouse yourself, and now you are teaching at Neighborhood Playhouse. You're a master in Meisner technique, and then you evolved and mastered Fitzmaurice also,
Mhm.
which is such a fascinating technique. And I would like for us to talk about that if it's okay. Let's start with
Yeah.
those two, because it's true that actors need technique, and Meisner is a fabulous way of connecting to yourself, to your true self, and being present at all time. But I don't think it's only limited to actors.
No.
For every human being, the art of being present
Mhm.
with
Mhm.
Meisner and the
Mhm.
art of breathing
Mhm.
properly and using your voice in a very efficient manner. So let's talk about that. Let's start.
Okay.
Your journey started actually with
Yeah.
Meisner
Okay.
and Fitzmaurice, and we go from there.
Okay. Okay. And of course, you'll keep me on track. So,
Absolutely.
um, I mean, it goes back pretty far. So I, um, it was pre-internet, that I was a young actor in university, and everyone that I was working with was like, "What are you doing here? Just go to New York City and just be an actor. Like, you don't need this. Like, just go, just go." And I wasn't that arrogant. So I knew that there was something people knew that I didn't know, no matter how talented people thought I was, that there was something that I needed. So at that time, I actually contacted like any artistic director of any theater in New York City that would talk to me. And I asked them their opinions. What do you think is the best theater school? Where should I go? I want to go to a conservatory. And across the board at the time, this was like 1989 or something, all of them said the Neighborhood Playhouse. Nobody, I mean, there's other great programs out there, but for whatever reason at that time, everybody said Meisner technique, the Neighborhood Playhouse is the thing that you should do. So I bought the book and I read Meisner on acting, Sanford Meisner on acting, and I was like, I don't know what this is, but it speaks to me. I don't know why, but I have some inklings, which I'll share. But I also, at that time, the documentary that Sydney Pollack made happened to be on PBS at the time. It was just made, it was just finished, and it was on PBS. And I was flipping through channels and it was on, and I was like, this is crazy. So I watched the documentary and saw all these spectacular actors, right, talking about this technique and the history of it and why it was important. And there was something about telling the truth that I was craving, and it was all about the truth. And I don't know if I really knew what that meant, but I did know that I had a lot of people who had lied to me in my life around me. And I think even as a young person, I was craving people being honest with me. So I was holding myself to some standard of trying to tell the truth. And I may not have been successful all the time, but I knew that that's what I needed. So when I applied to the Playhouse and I went to the summer session, just like you did. I did the 6 weeks and I was hooked. I was like, this is what I'm doing. I'm leaving college. I'm not going to stay. I have to go do this thing. My parents weren't psyched about it. Obviously, my mother really wanted me to try and find something else to do, even though my mother was an amateur performer. She was the lead in every community theater play, but she never did it as a living. My grandmother sang, my dad was in the shows, my brother, my aunts, everybody did amateur theater or sang in choirs or whatever they did. They were all these kind of like wished that they could, but knew they had to have a real job. And I was a rebel. I had purple hair and a nose ring and combat boots and crazy clothes. I was a thrifter. Like I didn't look normal, whatever that was at the time. And so I think people thought I was very rebellious. But the only rebelliousness I had was that I was in search of the truth. And so I got to the Neighborhood Playhouse. I did the 6 weeks. I loved it. And I even changed my last name so that I could get a specific teacher. That was like a secret at the time. Between the summer and the fall program, I changed my last name because I wanted this specific teacher that I worked with. And at that time, it was all alphabetical. It was the first half of the alphabet got this teacher, the middle got this teacher, the end. So I put myself in the middle. And then there were so many people in the beginning of the alphabet that I ended up with a different teacher and pushed to another class with
Oh,
this new name that I made up. And so I had to go to the director of the school and tell the truth and say, I didn't change it for my career. I changed it because I wanted this. Ron Stetson was his name. Ron Stetson was the teacher. And he's actually one of the characters in the book. When Meisner wrote the book, Ron Stetson was in those classes and under a different name. They changed all the names for the book, but he was in it. He's in the documentary. And so, lucky me, they let me go into Ron's class. And I sat in the theater. I remember sitting in the theater and looking around and listening to them talk and watching some of the teachers teach. And I thought, this work will save the world. This work could absolutely save the world if we are held accountable to the truth, if we have to express ourselves from an authentic place, if we have to shed our preconceived notions or our learned behaviors, as you know, right? If we have to get back to what's true to us and not just what was learned, then I thought, like, this is the answer. So at 19, I was very highfalutin about like, this is it, this is it. So like you, I thought that since I was a teenager, that this would be good for everybody. And and I had amazing teachers, and I was very, very lucky in a beautiful class of students that I worked with, and I got asked back for the second year. So at that time, again, and it's a big deal now to be asked back. At the time, there was 90 students in my first year class, and they only took about a third or so or less back. So out of 90 students, there were 22 in my second year class.
wow.
And again, I felt very lucky, very privileged. I had a ton of gratitude. It was really hard. And I say it was like 2 years of group therapy.
Agree.
Right? And there's no way
100%.
around it.
Oh God.
Anyone who wants to separate psychology from acting, I think, is doing a disservice to the work. So we're not your therapist, but at the same time, there's a way that we have to look at ourselves that supports this idea of being able to play all kinds of characters because we know the truth of us.
Yeah. Very well said. Oh God, I get goosebumps. Because it's true. My teacher asked me why you're here the first day. I'm like, I'm here to heal. And he's like,
Right.
okay. Because it has healing power. It
It
does.
does. It does.
All the things, all the things that you are filtering yourself to express out in the world, in the society, because of all this, you know,
Hmm.
unwanted responses that you are afraid to receive, you're so free to just be yourself as an actor and just respond truthfully, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And not be judged and not
Hmm.
be, and as a matter of fact, be celebrated for who you really are. This,
Yeah.
which I think act, what you mentioned, acting school has to be transferred into real life. Because
Yes.
if, what if we all treated ourselves and all
Hmm.
the responses that we give each other with that amount of authenticity and
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
truth?
Hmm. Well, it's true. I mean, you talked about I've talked about the different people that I do this work with, and I've worked with dear friends of mine who have a company called Connection Lab. And many, many years ago, my friend Russ came to me and he said, I'm going to do this thing, and I really think that you would be an amazing leader in this work because it's all Meisner based. Everything they're doing in the corporate world was, and this is what most people do when they're training people to be more connected to themselves or be better communicators, is use the principles of the performing arts. That's a fact. That is a fact across the board. Whether people want to call it that or not, it's what it is.
Mm.
And so sometimes if you go into a big corporation and you say, we're going to do acting techniques, they won't do it. So we don't talk about like this is an acting technique, but we know that everything that we're offering is based on what we learned as actors, how we were trained. Because as you said, we're trying to get to the truth. We're trying to get to a place where, I always say there's good Meisner and bad Meisner also, right? Bad Meisner is like berating people with your truth, right? I've been teaching Meisner for over 30 years. And I know that. So when my students and my clients get very confident, they like to hammer each other with their truth, but they don't pay attention to what's happening on the other side. So this idea of having awareness and paying attention to what you're causing on the other side is the key to good Meisner, right? Because there's a lot of teachers out there. There's a lot of people. I've certainly had a lot of students that I felt like I needed to retrain. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but I do feel that way because they only learned one part of it, which was setting themselves free. But the other part of it, again, is paying attention, right? Which is why my website, my business, right, is the art of awareness. It's about being aware of everything, not just me, but you, not just what I want to say, but how I'm affecting you. And can my heart be open enough to receive that so that it can affect me and change me in some way without just putting up a wall, right? What's the truth of that response and not just, me feeling like I need to attack back. And that happens sometimes, right? And it's okay, and it's in our acting training. But when you're working with CEOs and middle level management, they're not going to fight back. It's not about that. It's about, can I see how what I'm saying is affecting my employee, my boss, my whatever it is, right?
Absolutely. Part of communication, maybe, or
Yeah. Well, that's what I
how
tell.
words
Sorry.
you, no, no worries at all.
Well,
Using the
that
right words. Go ahead.
No, that's what I tell people I do. My job is to teach people how to be better communicators. Whether you're an actor, a parent, a scientist, a CEO, no matter who I've worked with, that's the foundation. Is I am helping you and supporting you in being a better version of you, right? Or the version maybe you dreamed of that you think you are in your head that you're so desperately trying to get to, but as we've said, don't have the tools to do that.
Absolutely. Okay, so I have this question. This is, I'm not sure this is whether this is a phenomenon or this is something, but this was a very interesting observation. So I have done Meisner before, not, I mean, elsewhere, and I had absolutely no idea what Meisner was about. And it wasn't like Meisner, Neighborhood Playhouse based Meisner. It was just
Hmm.
Meisner named.
Hmm.
But still, we were just repeating a bunch of stuff. That's it. There was nothing else to it. Still, I loved it so much because we were connecting in a way. But then Neighborhood Playhouse happened, and it was a dream come true for me, obviously. And when I learned the actual Meisner and the truth and the way that you can connect to your own true self, and then when you get connected to that level of authenticity, and then imagine you bring that with you out in the world where everybody else has to put layers of, I would call it self-protection layers, just
Hmm.
to protect ourselves from what's happening outside. So all this little
Yeah.
glitches
Well,
that happen. So the question is it like common that somebody who has that kind of training have difficulty then communicating with other people who are not trained? You know what I mean? Because
I
at the
do
same
know.
time, you want to say, it happened to me. I say, I swear to God, I was so honest about this. And then it
Yeah.
didn't come across effective.
Yeah.
So,
So, one of the first things that I tell the people that I work with, my students, not necessarily the corporate level, but if they're acting students, it's I say you can't go out into the world and Meisner everybody. You just can't. But what does happen is that your circle gets smaller.
yes,
Right. So because your bullshit meter gets higher, right? Because you start to tolerate less from people or the protection. I call what you were talking about survival, right? When people have the walls, when people have those things, it was necessary at some point in their life. The
absolutely.
question they're not asking themselves most of the time is it still necessary? Is it still reasonable for me to behave like that? Do I even know that I'm behaving like that because of my trauma, because of my predisposition and where I grew up? So I know I did it. I went out into the world and Meisnered my family, the truth. And there was a lot of fighting that happened. And I thought that that was okay. But as I said, the more you learn, the more you understand that it isn't about the fight. It is about the paying attention, and it's not just them that has to change, right? It's my response to you that has to change also, which again, I don't mean squashing what you're feeling, but being able to find a way that maybe is kinder. It's just a kinder way of interacting with somebody. So when you tell someone the truth, and look, I still get guilty of telling people the truth that don't want to hear it, do you know? And I'm not teaching anybody, and I think that's what happened in my life,
Teaching,
right?
absolutely. You're
I
just
think that's
healing.
what happens though. I think you learn this technique, you get so excited, and then you go out and try and like impose it on people, which is a kind of teaching them how to be better, but they're not ready for it, right? So again, it's coming back to like, am I trying to do this to somebody who, like you said, has no foundation like I do? And so you spend a lot of time looking for your people, right? Looking for your people that you can do understand to some degree, and then being okay, which is where the Fitzmaurice comes in, right? I think that the Meisner without the Fitzmaurice was very difficult. I had amazing voice teachers and movement teachers and dance teachers at the Playhouse all those years ago, but we know more now than we knew then.
Mhm.
Science, we've learned so much through science, and so much of the work is Fitzmaurice is based in trauma work. It's based in neuroscience. It's there's a thing that we have to do in ourselves. So if somebody isn't telling the truth and I just go, "Ugh," and then I feel like I need to tell them the truth, that's not going to come from a good place. If I can't soften into it and feel myself and let something move through and flow, then it probably is, they probably are going to get defensive. That probably is the response I'll get. But I think the more I learn about, or we learn about our own body and how I show up under stress and under pressure, the easier it becomes to communicate with anybody.
So this is fantastic. That makes a lot of sense. And in a way, yes, absolutely. I think that using the word teaching the technique, but at the same time, isn't it the new being that you are becoming, and you cannot really help it because you once you know, you cannot unknow, right? So
I mean, go
somebody
ahead.
told me, once you know, you cannot unknow. But then
Hmm.
at the same time, as I'm talking about myself.
Mm.
You are a professional now. I'm talking about myself as a, somebody who just graduated and went out to the world, and now I know what the truth look like and what
Mhm.
not being truthful look like. And then you see, and then you like, I don't know if I really want to connect with that anymore, or the new me doesn't appreciate that as much anymore. And then that awareness about myself gets a little bit more pronounced as to, oh, now what's happening inside me that is being triggered by this, response or this level of triggering. And then, like you said, we go to the other technique that then you get to know what exactly is happening inside your body. So how do we listen to what's happening inside our body, given all this teachings that we had growing up to ignore what's happening in our body? So how to start listening and healing ourselves using these techniques that are not necessarily for actors.
Well, I always go back to the pandemic. I go back to the great pandemic where, I mean, my algorithms are something in social media because I'm interested in something. So often things show up like that, the things that I'm interested in, obviously. And what I'm interested in is healing and somatic work. And so that's what you're speaking to, right? It's that somatic work became like a buzzword during the pandemic. How do we manage ourselves? I know so many people that went into therapy for the very first time, right, during the pandemic. And obviously it was all online, but I was also offering a lot of classes online, free things, pay what you can, just so that people weren't imploding and they were having a space where they could express and make sound and move and allow some of the stuff that they were holding or, like you said, keeping down to emerge. So I think, we have all these amazing people. Peter Levine has been around forever. We've got Bessel van der Kolk. We've got, Stephen Porges. We have all these amazing people who have um, been preaching these things for years, right? Years and years and years and years. But when we're ready is when we accept it, right? When we're ready for it, we can actually take it in. So that's why I say for me, about 15 years ago, when I started doing Fitzmaurice voice work, is when things clicked as a teacher, as a human, um, because it was the combination of doing this somatic work with the Meisner technique, which is when I started teaching Fitzmeisner, right? My self-proclaimed Fitzmeisner. Um, but I think that's it. The key is that we have to do some kind of somatic work. So there's a lot of mindful work out there, but I think people think it's sometimes it gets a little hippy dippy or, I don't want to listen to somebody talk like this all the time. And that's what people think it's going to be, which is, me, that's not who I am. It's not how I offer the work. I do think I lose people. There's a certain kind of person that needs that, but that's not as, to me, in the work that I do, it isn't as effective.
Yeah.
There's a calming, right? There's an awareness, but it doesn't have to be like a meditation class. Although we use meditation in Fitzmaurice as well. We use Reiki, we use meditation, we use all kinds of energy work. And until we understand that we are energy, that our traumas live in our bodies, and our trauma, it doesn't have to be a life or death trauma. It could be that you got on the bus today and there was someone that was mean to you, or someone who like took the seat before you did and didn't look at you, or someone who won't look you in the eye, and it causes this holding and the holding of your breath and the holding of your body. And as soon as we understand that every time we do that, it is at our detriment, it causes us to stay further away from being authentic, further away from understanding our body and our breath. But as I said, if we need it, if I feel like I'm going to get annihilated in the world, I might hold my breath, but I'm choosing it, right? Then it's a choice. And so what I'm trying to get to with everybody that I work with is a place where they have agency over it, that it isn't happening to them, that it isn't that they can't control this squeeze or the holding of their breath, that they're going, I'm making a conscious choice right now to go, nope, I don't want that person's energy to infiltrate my good day. right? I tell my students at the Playhouse all the time now. I say, you're coming to school. You got to be there for 9 a.m. It starts at 9 a.m. You're in rush hour. You're on crowded, packed subways. You're walking down the street. Nobody's caring about you, right? So you get, And I would say I have to do the same travel, but I refuse to let that happen to me because, again, I'm an artist. I'm a communicator. I'm a teacher. I do all of these things that I need to have access to myself. So if I'm standing on the subway, instead of holding my breath and holding on to that bar and squeezing it, I'm thinking about gravity. I'm letting go. I'm honoring myself because the other is kind of sabotaging myself. The other is the habit that I've had. And now, again, like you said, recognizing the difference, you only recognize the difference when someone brings it to your attention and you start to do this work of letting go. And what does that mean? And it's not just here, right? We know that there's a telling of ourselves, which is effective. Therapy, talk therapy, very effective. But to me, talk therapy without body therapy is only doing a half or maybe three-quarters of the work. But it's only kind of half of the work because it stays in there. And that's how I started this, right? All those little holdings stay in our body somewhere. And then we get sick or we have pains and we're like, why is this happening? I don't understand. And you're like, well, what did you eat last night? What conversation did you have before you went to bed? What were you watching? We can no longer say, I don't know, right? My favorite Maya Angelou quote is when you know better, you do better, right? And that's kind of what you were speaking to. How do you do better when other people aren't allowing you to? And you're like, well, I have the knowledge and then I have a choice of how I behave. So that's why I always say to my clients and my students, I'm not trying to change you. I'm trying to give you agency into choice. That's it. So that when, like I said, you're having this heightened experience, when you're feeling more than something that is neutral, which I actually don't think we're ever really neutral, but when you're feeling something more, you know how to manage it. You know how to not be destroyed by that moment.
It's very well explained. Beautiful. That, well, listen. You are Nori. Well, of course.